Hello, we are very happy to be back. I haven't made a recording for over a month, so I'm really glad to be back. Today is February 3rd, 2021, a new year. Happy New Year to everyone. It's been quite a few months still. We know there are still many cases in some of the institutions. We know there have been some problems in some of the institutions. So we hope you are all safe, well, and feeling okay with your roommates, with your cellmates, in contact with your families if that's possible, and doing okay. We've thought of you over these last months, and we're glad to be back with you. I'm Ms. Shepherd, and today is a mindfulness session. We'll do some guided meditation. We'll talk a little bit, do another guided meditation. If you would like to give us some feedback, we'd love to hear from you. It's hard to not hear from you, to not be able to see you all. You can give something like that to the chaplain or to the psychologist, whoever is in charge of the program that allows you to see these videos, and they can get it to us. So with that, let me ask my partner here to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Mr. Keogh. Glad to be back. Maybe there'll be some people who have met me in person, and I've met in person, but I'm happy to be connecting in one way or another with people who don't know me or us. I think what we typically do on these is start right out with a meditation session, and don't let that scare you if you're new to this or you're just tuning in, just curious. What I will guide you right along in a short meditation. And if you've been doing this before, I know that you'll be looking forward to the chance to relax and release and just come into yourself. But if this is new for you, just follow along. And I encourage you to do follow along, participate as I guide, rather than just looking at the screen. Follow along, because it can be kind of a nice experience, and there's nothing scary or threatening about it. So we'll begin. What we typically do is begin with the sound of a bell. It might not come through very well on the recording here, but the idea is that with meditation, you kind of get out of the concerns about what's going to happen into the future, the anxieties about what's coming up. And also you get out of the negative thoughts about the past too, and just be here. Just have your attention be on what's happening right now, because typically right now is okay. You know, you're sitting there, standing there, laying there, watching the tube. It's okay right now. And so listen to the bell and just
we'll put a picture up on the screen during the meditation, just so there is something else to see. We've changed it. Before it was a water scene, but it was a very summery water scene. So we're going to put up a winter picture now because it's winter.
Right. So begin with just listening to the bell. And now transfer your attention to your bodily feelings, your sensations. What is your skin telling you right now? What do you feel? And you kind of scan across your body. Some people might have little pain. Some people might have big pain. Just think about not only the things that might hurt, but also the things that are okay. And really zoom in on what do you notice in your body? There's gravity, right? So it's pushing you. If you're sitting, it's pushing you onto the chair or onto the bed. Or if you're standing, gravity's pushing you onto your feet, onto the floor. What's it feel like at your point of contact? And then what else do you feel? You can feel your, maybe your hands or your fingers are touching. Maybe you've got hand in hand touching, hands touching each other, or maybe hands on the knees. Notice the left hand. What's it feel like? And the right hand. They're a little different. Now take a couple deep breaths, nice deep breaths. Deep, breathe in all the way, hold a beat, and then release slowly. Do that a couple more times and notice what it feels like to breathe deeply. You might let your eyes close if you're okay doing that. Otherwise, just let your eyes gaze down to the floor or something where you're not being too distracted by what you see. And notice what it feels like to be breathing here. Cool air coming in the nose, belly moving up and down. Then let your breath mellow out to whatever is just the natural breathing pace. But keep your attention on it. Notice how it feels different, a little harder to pay attention to it when you're breathing normally, naturally. But when your mind wanders to something else and you notice that it's wandered, bring it back to the way it feels here, your body, the way your body feels. Typically with meditation, with this kind of meditation, we're still, we're not moving around a lot. So just stay in one position. Make it a comfortable position. Make it so that you're alert, not totally slumped, but relaxed. If you're standing, you can stand in a way that's relaxed yet upright. You're just using your muscles to balance, not really to hold yourself in a position. Same thing with sitting. You can sit in a way you don't have to hold yourself, you just balance yourself. And when the mind wanders, like we said, it'll go into what's going to happen next or into the future, something bothering you in the past. When you notice that you're not in the present anymore, come back. Come back and pay attention to your body, to your sensations. I personally like to come to feeling the cool air coming in my nose. That seems to be the most vivid thing for me to use as my home base to bring my attention back to. And just be here. Be right here, right now. You might be able to feel your heartbeat. If there are noises out in your space, distractions, can you let those kind of just stay outside of your skin? Pay attention to what's down, what your skin is feeling, or inside your body. Maybe you're sitting in a place that's a little cool and drafty, or maybe it's warm. Just notice what your physical sensations are. There might be little pains here and there, a little rumbling in the gut or something, little tightness. Just notice it and then move along to see what else you feel. If you're sitting or standing, notice your shoulders. Your shoulders tense. You can let those shoulders release. Let them hang down. There's no need to be tight up there. Notice your jaw. We hold a lot of tension in our jaws. Let your jaw hang. Let it release. And if your mind is jabbering on and on and on, lots of voices in your mind, you can use some words. You can say breathing in as you breathe in, breathing out as you breathe out. In and out. One breath leads to the next. In and out. Releasing tension in the muscles of the body, but keeping the mind alert. Not zoning out, actually zoning in. Zoning into the way it feels to breathe. So we'll do this for another 30 seconds. So just stay with me for the next half of a minute, not long at all. Follow that breath all the way in, pause, and all the way out. Another pause, all the way in. And then when I ring the bell, pay attention to the bell. You might just reflect a little bit on how you feel now. Just notice any difference between the way you feel now and the way you felt 10 minutes ago. And keep that in mind and know that you can do this yourself. You don't need to be watching a tube or hearing a bell. This is something that we do. We treat ourselves by breathing and watching ourselves breathe. Over to you, Ms. Shepard.
Good. Thank you so much, Mr. Keogh. So I expect that some of you may have been doing this practice for a very long time, some for shorter and some may be quite new. But I thought what I'd talk about today is how at least I think of how I bring this practice into daily life, into every moment. That we practice in the meditation to learn to pay attention and to give the heart and mind a bit of a rest from its constant churning. And by doing that meditation practice, it allows us to be more aware the rest of the time, to start to be more cognizant, more to recognize more easily what else is happening in our hearts and minds as we go about the day, rather than going into the sort of automatic pilot that we maybe have done before that. So over this last month or so, when we weren't recording, some of the things that I thought I'd maybe share a bit about how I've been noticing what my mind does and how that's actually been very helpful. Not always welcome, but helpful. So one of the things was during this time, my partner and I had I don't know how the words to have for this, a problem, I guess, with our doctor's office, our medical provider. And what happened is they did what I considered to be a mistake in terms of not informing us of something appropriately. So that the consequence was that we ended up having to pay way more money for something than we should have, something that should have been covered by insurance had they told us appropriately how we should take care of this bill. So when we realized that, I could notice myself getting quite irritated. And what I noticed equally was that this was a familiar pattern for me around, especially around doctors and medical stuff, that I sort of have a not so good relationship, totally self-produced. I don't trust medical institutions very well. And so I judge them and get quite testy around it. So this time, fortunately, this was not a situation that was going to mean we weren't paying the rent or eating or something. So it was manageable. Certainly not what I had hoped. I would have rather put the money elsewhere. And it wasn't around a serious medical issue that was dangerous to either of us. So it allowed, because of that, because it was definitely manageable, it really let me stop and see these habit patterns of the mind that I had, where I'm easily triggered by the medical establishment and what they do and what they don't do, what I think they should do and what I think they shouldn't do. And so it let me see that and reflect on that and recognize that I'm getting old and my husband's even older. And I'm going to have more interactions with the medical institute. If I'm lucky enough to continue to live, I will undoubtedly have more and more frequent interactions with that system, the medical institutions and doctors and those systems. And did I really want this pattern to continue? And how was I going to not go there every time something didn't go quite as I wished when I was interacting in a medical situation around health issues? Because if it was going to continue as it had been, I'd have a lot of suffering going forward, a lot of complaining, a lot of whining. And clearly that probably wouldn't help my interactions when I would go to the doctor or talk to a nurse or talk to the billing agencies. And so it really made me stop and say, what am I adding to this situation? Is it necessary? And can I learn from this rather than just get pissy, to use an unpleasant word. How do I build a mind that is going to let me manage as my health and the health of my husband decreases in the future, as it likely will? And that was really helpful, to recognize that I don't have to continue these patterns, and that it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't matter if they made a mistake or I made a mistake. What counts is, how am I going to work with this? How am I going to be able to sustain a steady, open, kind heart going forward for myself and for everyone I interact with, whether that's my husband or people in the medical situation, in the medical field, who are trying to do their best with what they know and what they have, just as I'm trying to do my best. And so bringing that kind of patience and interest and curiosity and honesty was extremely helpful. And also, reflecting on, well, what is it I really want? I mean, I would have liked to not have to pay this money I shouldn't have had to pay. But that's not what I really want. What I really want is to be able to not always be agitated, to get help when I need help, to be okay with life. And these sorts of automatic, reactive, historical irritations weren't helping. They were harming. So, these things are small, incremental changes. It didn't change the situation. It was still not as I think it should have worked out. But I could manage it. It wasn't going to derail everything else in my life. And that was great. That was so much better, to be able to just go on and go forward and figure out, if there was anything different I could have done, how do I do that differently in the future? And if not, then it was a practice in managing situations that I wish were different, which of course are going to continue to happen. There will always be things that I wish would be different. So that's one way that this practice has really helped me. And the way that happens is by just getting more able to kind of notice where the mind is going and what the consequence of where the mind is going is. And the second example is kind of around these recordings. That some of you may know that I took December or January off. I didn't make recordings during January. I just felt I needed a little more time to myself, time to my family. And that was really helpful. I really appreciated it. And the chaplains were all extremely helpful in saying they could either recycle videos or use old videos or do something. So hopefully it wasn't a problem for all of you, that hopefully you still had access to some teachings. But I also recognized, as I started thinking about when we would begin again, and we have begun again, we will now start making these videos every other week. What the mindfulness helped me notice then was anxiety, was worry, was fear about are these of any use? It's very hard to never see you, or, not even to be able to read your body language, much less be able to actually hear what you have to say in response to some of the suggestions or ideas that we share. And I realized my mind was going to a lot. Oh, it's not helpful and it's useless, and maybe it's actually harmful, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm sorry, the phone. Hopefully, there we go. So a lot of doubt and negativity and worry. And so I had to stop and feel that in the body, feel how much that made me tense. And also notice that the consequence of that tensing made me want to withdraw, made me want to back out, made me want to not continue. Even though, of course, that isn't what I want. That isn't at all what I want. But that's one of the ways in which I habitually respond to anxiety. And so just noticing that, knowing, oh, this is just a habitual pattern. This isn't based on any fact, any information. It's based on a feeling in the body. And so making decisions based on a feeling in the body isn't necessarily the wisest way to go without any data to back it up, without any information. And so I could just stop and say, yes, it's hard to talk without getting any feedback, but nobody's being forced to listen. If it's not helpful, they don't have to listen, and it hasn't harmed anything. And maybe it is helpful. And then all the better. But that to make a decision based on that anxiety wasn't wisdom, wasn't kindness, didn't help me, didn't help anybody else. And so all I'm suggesting here is that what the practice offers us is the ability to kind of notice what's going on in our own minds and hearts. Pause, always pause, take a break, and consider what's the consequence of these thoughts? Are these thoughts going to lead me to be snippy with a nurse that's trying to help? Are these thoughts going to lead me to change things I've been doing that I actually enjoy doing? I'm glad to do. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to do. And if so, to reconsider and to say those are just thoughts. They're just thoughts of anxiety or thoughts of worry or thoughts of fear, whatever, thoughts of judgment, that they're just thoughts and they do not have to be in charge. They are not in charge. I'm in charge. I get to choose. And what I get to choose is, what is it that I can do in this moment that's for my own long-term well-being and perhaps for the long-term well-being of others as well? Because that's what can bring me real ease, peace, and satisfaction. So this practice of mindfulness, of paying attention, is intended to be helpful, to help us take those moments to pause and to be patient and to see things kind of in a bigger picture. I think maybe that's one of the primary ways in which it helps me, is to broaden my perspective from my own self-view. What do I think? And what do I wish? And what do I want? Into, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing a bigger perspective here. And that when I connect into that bigger perspective, it's actually much more satisfying and leads to so much better results. So those are sort of some of the things I've been thinking about my practice and how my practice helps me, and hopefully how this practice might, in a similar way, help any of you. And I guess I wonder anything Mr. Keogh might like to add.
Thanks, Ms. Shepherd. I've just been thinking that a lot of the guys that are watching this are experts in seeing something that they don't like and choking it down and not reacting to it. If nothing else, you learn to survive by just laying low and not rising, letting your emotions show. And or maybe guys have trouble doing that, and they're in and out of seg. But a lot of guys have figured out how not to go into seg, but they choke it down. And I think what you're saying is maybe a better way of doing it, where you're not just choking down this aggravation and irritation. You're not just choking it down. You're actually kind of rising above it. And in my own experience, I was my career was one of those careers that's kind of almost like sales, where we dealing with people and trying to get them to do something that we wanted them to do and be friendly about it. And there'd be some guys who would be pretty good at it, but when you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with other people, you're always running into people that are going to aggravate you. Not everybody is your cup of tea. And if you've got a job where you've got to deal with this person, you can't just blow them off because, hey, that's your bread and butter. You learn to deal with the person who's aggravating you without showing it. But some guys were much better than others at letting it roll off their back and not letting it get to them. But some of those guys, they'd burn out because there'd be something aggravating happen, and they'd smile and go through it, and then back at the office they'd be just raging, and that's burnout. That's like you're destroying yourself. You're hurting yourself doing that. And what Ms. Shepherd was talking about is what others of us we kind of caught on to. It's like, no, the way to do it is kind of like, don't let it get to you. Kind of like it's in my mind. My reaction is under my control. What happens out there, what this person does, if it's aggravating or worse than just aggravating, that's not under my control. But the way I relate to it is under my control. But the thing is, too, that I also wanted to say this, too, is that it's not something that you turn on a dime. It's not something like, okay, good, I'm not going to let it bother me anymore. That's not going to work. But change is possible, small steps at a time, little at a time. And like the first step is exactly what we've been doing, which is that we're reflecting, we're kind of being more aware of what our mind is doing. When my internal voice is telling me what a horrible person this other person is and what they did, my internal voice is giving me all of this really aggravating. It's kind of like taking that whatever it was, offense that happened, and rehearsing it, replaying it over and over and over again. And it's like it's stirring me up. It's making me worse. It's making me suffer more. But so the first step is knowing, hearing that internal voice. It's like the internal voice is playing, but my mindfulness is hearing that voice. It's kind of seeing through it. Oh, that voice is doing that. And at first it's like, oh, I can see it do it. I can't make it stop doing it, but I can see it. But already it's a success. It's already a first step. Once you see what your internal voice is doing, you're hearing it, not just letting it talk at you, but you're kind of hearing what it's doing. You've got a little bit of a handle on it. You got a little bit more control, maybe not total control. You can't turn it off, but you've got a little bit better grip on it. And the more that goes on, the more you can kind of let your mindful mind watch your internal voice and what it's telling you. The more you see, oh, you know what, that's a script. You know, yeah, I might not be able to turn it off, but maybe I can cut it off in a few minutes. I'll let it spin. I'll let that record player spin out for a while, and it'll slow down. If I can wait it out and not take it too seriously, it'll slow down. You know, in the same way maybe that we notice in a meditation, after a few minutes of meditating, our mind does kind of calm down a little bit. So that first thing is that mind awareness that Ms. Shepherd said. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out is that we can control this, but it takes a little practice, takes a little time, maybe more than a little time. Maybe we never totally control, but the seriousness of the event that triggers us, it has to be more and more serious before we really get triggered. Small things don't bother us as much. And I've noticed this with groups in the prisons too. Guys will come back and tell us this. They'll say, you know, as I was on the phone with my baby mama, and she said something, and I remember in the past that would have really set me off, and I just kind of listened to her. And a guy was saying that with a fair amount of pride and satisfaction, that I was able just to sit, you know, she said something that was really outrageous, and I was able just to listen to it. You know, what he was saying is that I didn't respond. I didn't get all buzzed up. And I think this mindfulness practice, the meditation practice, you'll notice this. You'll notice this pretty quickly in small things. Big things takes longer, but it happens. So back to you, Ms. Shepherd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Keogh. So absolutely, I am not saying to choke it down. I am not saying to stuff it. And in fact, I'm saying exactly the opposite. So what mindfulness does is it brings it up. It lets us not react to it, but look at it. What I'm saying is investigate it, pay attention to it, say, whoa, look at what's going on here. It's about giving ourselves this space so that we examine what's occurring in our own hearts and minds, not as my heart and mind, but as, oh, what's happening? Almost as if it's happening to, not quite to someone else, but to, you know, that it's a story you're reading about, or it's a, you know, you're hearing about what somebody else did, so that you can have some perspective on it and have the ability to look at it for what it is. And then know, well, is this helpful to anybody? Is this what's needed? Is this what's useful? But because when we're identified with these thoughts, when there are thoughts, then of course we think they're useful because I thought it. Because we're you know, it's me. This gives us the chance to drop aside all that meanness of it and just look at it and say, whoa, this person really has a lot of touchiness around medical decisions. Why is that? What's happening with that? Is that really of any use? Is that accurate? Has that person considered what medical professionals have been dealing with over the last 9 months? Well, maybe not, you know, maybe I hadn't enough. So it's absolutely not at all about stuffing feelings or ignoring feelings. It's in many ways exactly the opposite. It's really giving them the attention they're calling for. But we give them that attention not by acting out on them, but by considering them and recognizing them, reflecting on them, contemplating them, examining them, considering what their consequences are. Not, you know, I think the opposite is just stuffing them, pretending they don't exist, or acting on them, thinking they're all that there is. And so this is kind of neither of those. This is something completely different than either of those. And it takes practice, as Mr. Keogh says. And it takes a willingness to pause and really I think it takes an enormous willingness to be honest and to be courageous, to look at what's really arising right now and to not have to react, to give yourself time to consider whether anything needs to be done at all, and if so, what that anything might be. So thank you for that clarification, Mr. Keogh, that it's an important one. And that it's also, words are so difficult in talking about this practice. I wouldn't use the word controlling either, that it's also not controlling our emotions. We're not aiming to be more controlling. We're aiming to be more aware of what's arising. And then giving ourselves the time and space to decide what response is appropriate, or if a response is appropriate. So often, no response is needed, just as Mr. Keogh said. So often we can just decide, she's having a hard time. That's why she's stressing out. Maybe I just need to let her talk and be here to listen. If somebody is, going off on the phone. And so this practice of mindfulness helps us give that person that time and space without making it my problem, without being reactive to it. So it's not that we're controlling our responses, it's that we're examining them and reflecting on them and making choices that are beneficial to ourselves as well as other people. Anything else, Mr. Keogh, on this?
I think we've been talking a lot. I think we should practice some more.
Okay. So let's do another short guided meditation to end our session. Put up the image if that's helpful to you. Using the bell for as long as you can hear it. I can hear it for a good long time, but I know that Zoom doesn't pick it up. You don't hear all the reverberations, unfortunately, on Zoom. But even if you can't hear the bell, actually using sound can be a very helpful way to begin a meditation. And in a manner similar to we've been talking about, you can use sound to see what it's like just to receive sound without adding labels or stories to the sounds. Just notice how sounds maybe are present and then dissipate. How sounds arise, and then maybe another sound, and then maybe there's a moment of quiet, and then another sound, without having to identify what those sounds might be. If it's words or people talking, without even having to hear the words, to make sense of the words, to instead just hearing it as noise, sound, something that is in awareness. This is a practice of awareness and learning to recognize that actually awareness is always going on. And it's different than thinking. It might be a reflection, an investigation you undertake in the next few days or months or years, is to notice what's the difference between awareness and thought. sounds arise in awareness. Thinking arises in awareness. You can use the word awareness, knowing. And in our meditation, we bring awareness or knowing to the body and bodily sensations. So for this last brief sitting, see what you might be aware of in the body right now. Is there a sense of the whole body? A presence of a groundedness, perhaps a weightiness in the body itself. Rather than thinking about an image you may have in your mind of the body, see if there's a sense of the feeling of the body. Are you aware of the boundaries of the body? And does your awareness actually even extend slightly beyond what you would have assumed were the boundaries of the body? Is there a sense of the space within which the body is? And then within the space, within the body, is there a sense of breathing or of energy, breath energy, traveling throughout the body? Maybe even extending slightly beyond what feels like the boundaries of the body. Letting awareness rest within this felt sense of the body. Having a sense of the breath as an energy within the body. Feeling what happens on the in-breath and the out-breath. How is this in-breath different or new? What happens on this out-breath? How connected to the various parts of the body feel? Is there a whole sense of a whole body? Maybe there's kind of a foot way down out somewhere else. And then maybe a hip. Maybe the head is the most prominent sensation. Noticing, how might this whole body be experienced? What's missing in the felt sense of it? Maybe the trunk is pretty clear in our sensation, in the experience. Maybe the hands, and they get connected. And we let the awareness rest with this experience of being embodied, being in a body, a felt body. And knowing what's arising in this body. Is there tension or ease? What's the impact of each breath? Maybe just resting with each in-breath and each out-breath, wherever that is most prominent for you. Maybe it's localized in a particular location that you feel the breath coming in and going out. But maybe it's throughout the body. Maybe there's a sense of with each in-breath, there's an energy that arises in the whole body. With each out-breath, there's a relaxation in the whole body. Using this time, however it works for you on this particular day, right now. Because it will likely be different next time. Our meditation each time is an investigation, bringing awareness to what's happening right now. What's happening in the breath and in the body right now. Bringing attention to what's happening that is comfortable, at ease. If there's something that's not so comfortable, one way to work with it is to perhaps find some place that is comfortable and just let the not so comfortable place be on its own for a bit. Or another way is to bring the attention to the not so comfortable place and see if you can breathe right through it. Breathe into it. Allow the in-breath to give it some energy and the out-breath to release any tension that's there in that place of discomfort. So each time you sit to meditate is new. And we bring the experience of prior times and the wisdom of knowing this is new. What would be most helpful right now for what's happening here in this moment? The experience of prior moments and prior meditations might be helpful, but they don't have to demand what we do. We don't have to do it the way we did it last time. We can use that experience, but try something new as well. So that each meditation is a learning. Each moment is a learning. Learning to bring more wisdom, more kindness, more open-heartedness to every moment. Not because we should, but because it is a kindness to ourselves. It is for our own well-being. It is a way to look after ourselves. So please do look after yourself, take care of yourself, and one another as well. Thank you for your practice. We'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Mr. Keogh, anything to say?
Hang in there. Take care of yourself.
See you. Be well. Bye-bye.